There we go. All right, welcome. Today is our Thursday, October 10th edition of PagerDuty Commons Demo Roundups. Today I'm joined by Gurinder and Nick. We're going to be talking about the Operations Center Modernization. Today's session, we're going to be talking about, we're going to do some announcements, all that good stuff, basic stuff there. Gurinder's going to talk to us about the Operations Center Modernization, and then Nick's going to hit us with a product demo. There will be plenty of time for Q&A, so if you have questions, you want to put them in the chat, use the QA function there. That's great, and we will try and answer them as we get to the end. Next up, next week, Thursday, October 17th, scaled service ownership with Maggie and James. Save your spot there. You've got a QR code, or you can hit that URL to sign up and visit us next week. Other things coming up, webinar, Build Resilient Operations to Help Future-Proof Your Business. Kat is at Elevate CX, it's a masterclass. She's doing supporting support, how we take care of our teams. That's the 11th. I am at NDC Porto next week in Portugal. And yeah, if you ever want to know where we are, what we're doing, you can hit us up on the community.pagerduty.com/events page. Find us there, the things that we're doing, and where you can find us. If you would like to share what you are doing with PagerDuty, we would love to hear from you, and we'd love to share your story in our community spotlights. So if you are interested in talking to us about how you use PagerDuty, how it's improved your workflows, the challenges you've overcome with PagerDuty, we would love to hear from you. So you can scan that QR code. You can always reach out to our team. We're community-team@pagerduty.com and let us know, because we would love to hear your story. If you haven't yet checked it out, we relaunched the PagerDuty community site in September. It's now PagerDuty Commons, and we have a new platform for you. It looks great. We're really excited for you to join us there. Ask your questions, share your thoughts, come hang out with us, share your operations memes. That would be great. So we would love to have you join us over there. And with that, I will turn it over to Gurinder to take us through Operations Center Modernization.
Thank you, Mandy. Hi, everyone. I'm Gurinder. I'm a solution consultant like Nick. And so we both, we sort of are the technical side of an account team here at PagerDuty. So we've got the joy of bringing you the Op Center modernization solution that PagerDuty offers. So as we said in the agenda, I'll cover a couple of slides, and then we'll hand over to Nick for a practical demo to show off, what is the Op Center modernization platform or solution. So, Op centers, network operation centers, security operation centers, they're pretty commonplace. Now, not everybody has one, but a lot of the large enterprises do traditionally have operation centers. And, there's a place for them in both large organizations and small organizations, and often there's multiple operation centers in those larger organizations. And traditionally, PagerDuty has been able to support both customers with operation centers and without. Without, we've always been sort of able to provide a system or a solution where engineers can be paged for problems. When there's an incident, they get notified. They're responsible. You build it, you ship it, you own it type of mentality. But at the same time, when there is an operations center, PagerDuty can empower them. It helps L1, L2 levels escalate and coordinate incidents quickly. We can help reduce the time spent manually triaging, manually escalating problems, and that's really where this solution comes into play. So today, like I said, we'll cover what we're hearing from customers, what we heard from customers, and what led us to sort of build out this solution. So what was the sort of the driving force behind this? Well, we heard four common problems and four major problems from our customers. One was, there's a huge amount of noise in their systems. There's countless monitoring tools, all producing hundreds of alerts, hundreds of signals a day, well, thousands of signals a day, rather. And that figure is always increasing. And it's becoming harder and harder to understand what is the real problem, what is the real issue in that noise, what is important and what isn't, what can be, ignored, what can be suppressed, what do we need to escalate, what do we need to prioritize. And that was partly due to the volume of alerts, but also the lack of visibility, the lack of information contained in those alerts. It's great to know something goes wrong, but what we really want to know is why, or has this happened before? What has changed? Is there a reason why there's this problem? And so there's that lack of visibility into the surrounding data, the additional data that makes understanding an incident easier. And then when there was a problem and we knew what to do with it, there were teams who had to manually call, find out who's on call for a particular component, a particular team, and contact them. So they were, looking up in Excel sheets to find people's on-call rotas, looking up their phone number, or maybe messaging them on Slack or Teams and hoping they'd respond. And that sort of wasted time and that incidents lasted longer. Incidents escalated and became more serious because we weren't able to get to the right people quickly enough. And in fact, a lot of the time, the remediation or the resolution for that issue could be quite simple, but maybe those people within the operation centers don't necessarily have the technical expertise to resolve them. So, they wanted that we were hearing people wanted to start to remediate problems more easily. Maybe give the L1, the L2 more power to fix problems without having to escalate. And the final problem was, sort of collectively, without that power, without that ability to resolve, ultimately the L1 and L2 teams were largely just there to escalate problems. And we wanted to help them become more efficient. And if more and more problems can be handled by L1 and L2 teams, there's less problems being escalated. There's less disruption to the L3 or the subject matter experts, so they can focus on delivery, focus on the products, the solution they're building. So those were the 4 high-level problems we saw, and PagerDuty is really a solution that will help empower the Ops Center to sort of, I guess, combat those problems. So by the Ops Center Modernization solution gives Operations Center teams the ability to be more proactive, less reactive. So give them more information when there's an incident. Give them one-click ability to escalate or one-click ability to trigger diagnostics or remediation. And then with that noise problem, the solution is built, and we've been doing this for years at PagerDuty, is built to reduce noise, reduce alerts, correlate data so that when an alert comes in or when an incident gets raised, the responder is being told and given the most relevant information. They're not being paged countless times, disrupting them. They may be paged for one incident with multiple signals grouped together and correlated all together. It's the same sort of thing they might be doing manually if they got paged multiple times, but in this case, PagerDuty is able to reduce noise and correlate on ingestion. And when there is an issue, when there is an incident, how can we help the level 1, level 2 within the NOC potentially remediate or escalate as quickly as possible? So building out workflows where we can trigger automation, whether that's machine automation to resolve, or whether that's starting to streamline and automate incident processes, spinning up war rooms, spinning up conference bridges, getting the right technical teams involved. And another core part was, like I said, there might be tens, if not, hundreds of monitoring tools around the business. And it's hard to understand what are the correct signals. There's no single pane of glass. And that's exactly what PagerDuty offers with the Ops Center Modernization solution. And we'll be covering that in the demo shortly. And then, as PagerDuty has sort of traditionally been, known for, and the leader in real-time notifications. When there is a problem, how do we notify the right team at the right time as quickly as possible? There's sort of PagerDuty's bread and butter there. And the solution is a trusted solution used by over 60%, 65% of the Fortune 100. And we'll cover some customer examples later on today. So lastly from me, how does this work? So I want to walk you through it now on a slide, and then Nick will put this into practice. On the left-hand side, you've got events, alerts, customer signals. Now, they're coming in from our monitoring tools. They're coming into PagerDuty, and what we always have done is we start to ingest and normalize that data. So we want to make sure that when there is a problem, we're telling you about the real issues, not the noise, not the warnings, not the non-critical events. So how can we start to suppress deduplicated events? How can we reduce some of that noise on ingestion so that you're only working on the critical events, and they're the ones you need to really act on? Once we have determined those critical events, how can we start to give you additional context into what's going wrong? Whether that's signals as to when has this type of problem happened before, or is it signals when has this happened before? Who's worked on it? What did they do? What's the possible origin of this problem? How can we give you that additional triage context so that we can make decisions more quickly? And if possible, can we attempt to auto remediate? It's not always possible, but if we can reduce the number of events and incidents escalating up to the subject matter experts, like I said, we're freeing up their time. So if we can attempt to auto remediate, that's great. We might resolve the problem. But if not, let's automatically run additional diagnostics to give us context. Our subject matter experts, L1s, L2s, are being told, okay, run these scripts or run these actions, get that information, and then make a decision as to what to do next. Can we trigger that diagnostic immediately and automatically so that we're not having to wait for somebody to manually do it? That means we can make that decision faster, whether we need to route it to another team, whether we have some additional automation we might be able to trigger. But if we are routing to that team, how can we, again, inform them as quickly as possible, page them, phone them, whatever it might be, and get them working together as quickly as possible within a war room, within a conference bridge, within a Slack channel, a Teams channel. And then throughout that process, how can we empower those teams to maintain comms with the business, ensure the business is kept up to date as to what's going wrong, what the current state is, and how soon may we get back to a healthy state. And ultimately, we can help resolve that incident more quickly. And then, because it's really a big cycle, it's not a single flow. We want to learn, we want to improve, we want to get better. So can we start to create post-incident reviews, or can we use the analytics to understand what are those common problems we're seeing, and can we start to potentially create remediation for them? If we're seeing the same problem with the same resolution, can we attempt to automatically remediate without escalating so that we don't have to disrupt teams? So it's really that cycle of improvement. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Nick to cover the solution in a bit more detail and give you a more practical demonstration.
All right. Thanks, Gurinder. Hi, y'all. Yeah, so I'll be walking through sort of the actual, what does that actually look like in PagerDuty, right? How do you actually configure some of this stuff? And how does PagerDuty actually drive towards those goals, right, of Ops Center modernization? So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Everybody can see Pagey here, just no incidents. Everything's hunky-dory, good news. All right, I'll assume yes. Okay, so this is the new hotness. You may be thinking, hey, my PagerDuty doesn't look like this. This is what we call the operations console. So this is kind of a new view of sort of what's going on in your environment, right? And this is designed for ops centers, observability teams, SRE teams, NOC teams that are kind of, responsible for overlooking everything that's going on in your environments, right? Not just maybe, one small little area of, your applications and your databases and your servers over here, they're kind of the overarching kind of team that's looking at everything, right? So the operations console is really giving them the ability to kind of see everything at once, right? So you'll see here, there's a lot of cool little actions that you can take on these incidents that are starting to come in real time, if you'll notice. So give us one sec here. Let me just hit the reload button. But as these incidents start to come in, it's coming in real time, right? Which is a brand new thing for PagerDuty. So things trigger, they're immediately shown up here on this operations console so that NOC team or that centralized team can immediately start taking action on them. So you'll see here, we've got some incidents that have started to come in, right? And I can start taking action on these incidents immediately, right? I can start running any sort of automation or actions here. I can merge all these together because as a centralized team, maybe I've noticed, hey, you know what? These are all actually related. You know what? We don't need to actually have 3 separate incidents here. Let's merge them all together. Or I can reassign them. I can add responders. You get the idea. The idea here is that I can immediately start taking action on these incidents and start doing a little bit of, correlation here to understand what's going on, again, across my different systems, not necessarily just in one piece of it here. Operations console, really cool new concept. This is obviously fairly new, so we're going to be adding a lot of really cool new features here. And you can also add additional kind of customizations that you'd like here as well, different columns that are, important to you, right? If you want to just add, any sort of information here to make it more useful for your team. So we want to start doing a little bit of triage, right? Just understanding what the heck is going on. And conveniently, I have some priorities here, right? So I've got a P1, P2, P3. Obviously, I know which one I want to start focusing on. So let's go ahead and click into this P1 here because this looks like a big deal. Now, you may be asking, how did it know it was a P1, right? Where did that label come from? You'll also see there's a little note here. I've got a quick little head start, right? Bryce is being actively, it's in the triggered state here. So Bryce is being actively paged right now, right? Phone calls, text messages, all the channels that you all know and love that PagerDuty will wake you up on at 3 a.m. So once Bryce gets, acknowledges this incident, we've got a very convenient little note here that says, hey, try this runbook, right? We know in this circumstance, when we've got API data flow degradation, generally this is the runbook that we want to run with. So let's insert that into the incident so that Bryce has a little bit of ammo. So he's not searching around, where do I go to try and fix this thing? It's right there for him. And again, how did that get there, right? You'll see that an event orchestration rule added that for us. Now, what is event orchestration, right? We could spend probably the rest of the time on just event orchestration because it's really cool and there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with it. But you can think of event orchestration as our if this then that rules engine, right? We can basically say, hey, read that JSON payload. Let's write some rules to say when this field says XYZ and that field says ABC, we want to do these things, right? And you'll see here I have a quick little rule that says, here's the condition. If the custom details match this, add that note, and then also set that priority to P1, because we know in that situation that is a P1, that's a customer facing issue. It's a big deal. So we want to flag it as such. And we also want to, again, give our responders a quick head start on sort of, getting started on resolving that thing. So that's kind of where those 2 small little things came from. Again, just giving our responders some help as to where to get started. And then with event orchestration rules, of course, we can have the idea of sort of nested rules, right? So yes, I have this rule here. I also have a rule here that says, hey, if it also matches this, let's run an automation action, right? So think of automation actions as sort of the first few steps of those run books, right? So maybe in this case, it's to get some diagnostics or maybe try and restart that server. Gurinder had mentioned some of that event-driven automation, right? So maybe in this case, we want to write a rule to say, you know what, before we page that human, just restart that server first. Maybe we just need to unplug it and plug it back in, right? So try that before we page out to a human being. You'll see I have this disabled because I'm going to actually run that live so you can see it in real time, but that's kind of the idea, right? So we have these idea of sort of nested rules here. And then we have fallback or else rules as well. Hey, if it doesn't match this, then let's fall down and run this, this rule here, right? So again, event orchestration, a whole really cool set of features that you can do all kinds of cool things and kind of not only route incidents to the correct services based on that JSON payload, but once they get to that service, once the correct team is notified, you can see here, you have quite a bit of customization to determine what do you want that incident to actually do? Do you want it to be extra noisy? Do you want to add some, run books? Do you actually want to run those run books with automation actions, right? There's a lot of really cool options here. So I won't get lost in the sauce there too much, but really, really cool, fun stuff. And again, Bryce has a little bit of information. Hey, this is a P1, and now I've got that run book. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the acknowledge button because, again, as we all know, acknowledge is raising your hand, right? It's saying, hey, I am going to work on this. I've got this. I'm either going to fix this thing myself, or I'm going to use the power of PagerDuty to pull in some help, right? So it's in the acknowledged state here. Now, as it is acknowledged, now I can use PagerDuty to get a little bit of context, right? We mentioned that context, or Gurinder mentioned that context. How does PagerDuty give you information to figure out what the heck is going on, right? So we've got our run book, that's one piece of it. But I can, if I scroll down here, I can take a look at several different things. Most notably, I can look at recent changes. Now, recent changes in PagerDuty are simply change events, right? You may be aware of this, you may not. So there are two types of integrations in PagerDuty, right? There's the events integration, which you all know and love. That's the thing that triggers incidents and pages out to you, right? There's also a change integration. Now, a change is not going to trigger an incident. It's simply context. It's going to ingest that some sort of a change happened in your environment. That could be from GitHub, GitLab, ServiceNow, Jira, Chef, Puppet, whatever you may be using as a CDCI tool. You can ingest that information into PagerDuty, and PagerDuty will intelligently surface that information for your responders to say, hey, you know what? Kirby here pushed a branch master 2 hours before this incident occurred. Now, that's not necessarily a silver bullet to say, Kirby, you're fired and you broke everything. But it's just, again, a little bit of context, right? To say, okay, well, maybe that's something that we should take a look at. We can click into here, take a look at that change and see if it's, maybe we deployed some bad code, or there was some permissions that didn't get, checked off, or whatever it may be. Again, just a little bit of context to understand what changes may have led to this actual incident. I believe it was something like we did a survey, and it was something like 70% of all incidents across all PagerDuty customers stemmed from some sort of internal change, right? Somebody pushed a branch master, deployed something, made a change, did a security patch, whatever it may be, and that led to the incident. So we figured, why not get that context to the responders so that they can more quickly get to that root cause. Continuing to scroll down, we can look at two different tabs here. We'll start at past incidents. Now, past incidents is going to give you an idea of how we ran into this incident before. You'll see it gives you a little bit of a heat map here. And you'll see it has happened before in the past. Quite a few times back in, let's see here, back in April here, but it hasn't happened in a while here. So we can get a little bit of context. Again, we don't want to reinvent that wheel, right? We just want to see, have we dealt with this before? And if we did, how long did it take us? Who was involved? What steps did they take, right? I can click into each of these. I can click into the incident itself, kind of read the notes and understand, hey, Nick fixed this in 55 seconds, right? How did he do that? I don't want to spend too much time here, right? I want to just see how he did it, right? Or maybe I can, add Nick as a responder to this incident, pull him in and say, hey, I need help because I saw you fix this before. Right. So again, just using that past context, that past information, so that you can resolve this incident as quickly as possible. Next up, we've got related incidents. So related incidents is similar. Whoops, excuse me. Similar, but a little bit different. I'm just clicking all over the place here. Similar, but a little bit different. Related incidents is looking at what is going on across your environment today, right now, right? Not in the past, right this second. What other services are having incidents that may be affecting my service, right? My web application backend service. And you'll see here, we've got a couple different incidents that may be related, right? We've got some latency on the database, disk issues on the server, and that may be affecting the incident that we're having right now, right? If you figure, a database is down or degraded in some way, that's probably going to have some sort of a cascading effect on other services, right? So we want to make sure that we're surfacing that for our responders. Now, how is it getting this information, right? How does it know that? Well, several different ways. It can do it intelligently. It can understand patterns, right? So our AI ops features has machine learning built into it. And it will start to see patterns of, hey, you know what? I saw that there was an incident on service A. 2 minutes later, there was an incident on service B, and that seems to happen a lot, right? So I think those things are related, and it'll prompt you to say, are these things related? You can kind of give it a thumbs up or thumbs down to train it to say, yes, indeed, these are actually related services, or these incidents are related in some way, right? And that those dependencies on services are kind of a little bit easier to view in what we call the service graph. You'll see here we have a few different ways to actually, if I just reload this here, it should show our actually affected services. Here we go. So we've got this kind of branching tree of service dependencies, right? And you can see our little dependencies here that we're working in today. But you'll see here, we've got many different technical services that roll up to what we call business services, right? A business service may be something that your customers actually interact with, or kind of an overarching service that that your customers are somehow interacting with, right? A business component of your company. And meanwhile, underneath those business components, we've got those technical services, right? As we know, if you go onto a website or something and you're checking out on a website, when you hit that checkout button, right, it's a convenient little button for your customers, but we all know as technical folks, underneath that, there are many different technical services that allow that checkout to actually happen, right? And so you can reflect that here in PagerDuty to say, you know what, we've got our web application backend, but downstream, we've actually got the database, the app server that are supporting that technical service. And then that technical service is in turn also supporting the web application's business service. And that business service, again, in turn, is supporting an even bigger business service, right? So you can kind of have these dependencies upstream and downstream in PagerDuty. So it's pulling from that, it's understanding, are there service dependencies here? And are those services that you depend on having issues as well? Now, again, it can also suggest those dependencies for you, as I mentioned. So that's kind of the context there, right? That's the understanding of sort of what changed. Have we dealt with this before? And are we having problems across the board on any other services as well that may be affecting the service? I don't know. Mandy, if we should pause for questions, or we're saving them for the end. I know that
No,
was a
we
lot
can.
that I went through there.
No, you're
Okay.
good. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So we've gone ahead and done our due diligence. Maybe we want to, when we go into this run book here, we've realized, hey, I need some diagnostics, right? Because that's typically the first step, maybe the first couple steps of a run book, right? Hey, just run some tests, run some diagnostics, figure out what exactly is going on, what's impacted, what components are down, etc. So I could SSH into different systems. I can maybe log in here, log in there, maybe run some random script that I have living in my notes on my computer. Maybe I have some Ansible scripts that are running somewhere, or I have a friend on the SRE team that has a cool script. Maybe I have to ping him in Slack to get that script, or have him run it. Or ideally, maybe I can just run it directly here from PagerDuty, right? So generally, I need to run some Kubernetes health checks in various different environments, right? But rather than having to, again, do all those manual sort of processes, I'm just going to run those health checks directly here from PagerDuty, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run this job. It'll just give it a second, because it's actually going out into our dummy environments and pulling in some information here. So I'm going to run that job directly from here, right? Our automation suite allows us to centralize all those different sort of scripts and automations that may be living in various different places in your organization, right? And again, those maybe on your notes app and on your Mac. Some Ansible scripts over here, some random bash scripts over there, right? We can centralize all that together. As Gurinder had mentioned, if your L1, L2 always has to pull in your higher up higher tier engineers to be able to do some simple things like just run some diagnostics. This really democratizes that process, right? So we don't necessarily need to rely on those L3, L4 resources, those expensive resources. We can have those L1 and L2 teams simply just run those actions themselves, right? So we'll give it just 1 sec. It should run here in just a second here. Here we go. So you'll see here now as maybe an L1 engineer that's very new, I don't necessarily know how, I don't have the technical know-how to go into Ansible or go into Kubernetes and pull those logs for myself, right? But I do know how to press a button, right? So I don't need to know how to do those things. I can press that button and I can get those diagnostics here posted as a note, right? So we can see what's healthy, what's actually down, what's actually degraded, and therefore get a better idea of sort of the splash impact and maybe who needs to be involved in this incident, right? So again, just allowing the rest of the organization access to those automations with the click of a button. Now, keep in mind, I kind of showed you how we could just kind of click a button, but if you'll recall, we could write that event orchestration rule to always just run those Kubernetes health checks, right? Hey, when Nick or when Bryce gets paged, I want those Kubernetes health checks to just be sitting there waiting for them, right? So we could again just write that rule to do that. Now, of course, that doesn't demo as well, right? Because if everything just happens in the background and it's automated, it doesn't make for a great demo. So I just wanted to show you how you could do it with the click of a button with sort of the human in the loop, but keep in mind you could have the machine just do that automatically for you. So we've gone ahead and we've looked at our recent changes. We've looked at our past incidents, related incidents. We've ran our diagnostics to figure out, what exactly is affected here. And we've realized, hey, this is truly a P1, right? We've confirmed that it is a customer-facing issue. It is affecting customers, and also we need to involve additional folks, right? We need to pull in other folks to help us actually get hands on keyboard to fix this thing. And then we also need to make sure that our C-level, our VPs, our stakeholders internally are updated as well, because they need to be kept abreast of the situation if this is a big customer-facing issue, right? So we're going to go ahead and run what we call an incident workflow. Now, an incident workflow is simply just a set of actions to respond to certain types of incidents, right? In this case, a P1 or a major incident, right? So we have very many, you can have as many different workflows as you'd like for every single situation in the world. But for this case, we're just going to have one for a major incident. Now, keep in mind, again, I can run these major incidents, again, with the click of a button here, right? And you'll see a lot of things start to fire off here if I did click this. We can also run these incident workflows conditionally as well. Now, what does that mean, right? So this is sort of the quote unquote manual way to run an incident workflow, even though, I would argue it's not all that manual, right? You're doing a lot of really cool things with just the click of a button, but it's kind of what we would call human in the loop, right? We can also run that incident workflow completely conditionally. When this incident hits certain conditions or thresholds, that workflow will run automatically, right? So in this case, I've had it set to say, hey, when it's acknowledged by a human and it's a P1 and this custom field gets changed, run that incident workflow automatically. So we'll go ahead and say, you know what, this is indeed a major incident. So I'm going to declare it as such, save that. And you'll see some things start to light up here as that incident workflow starts to run. So you'll see here, boom, a Zoom bridge got created. You'll also see a linked Jira ticket got created for us, right? And that's a bi-directional kind of connection there. If I write notes here into the PagerDuty incident, that'll push back into Jira and vice versa, right? In Jira, if somebody wants to work out of there and wants to communicate with folks in PagerDuty, they can do so. We'll also see here, this all lives in Slack, right? If you'll recall, you probably all use our Slack integration and probably love it. I hope you do. I do. But we have our incident here, right? That's been assigned to me. And then it's in sort of our general channel, right? Our web backend channel. And there may be, 30, 50, 100 people in that channel, right? That's more just for sort of like, hey, this is happening. We don't necessarily need you on this, but this is just kind of what's going on right now, right? And that's fine. But if we want something more targeted, right, just for the folks that are added onto this incident, that incident workflow actually created a incident-specific Slack channel just for the folks that are involved in this incident, right? So you'll see here that incident workflow also added a couple additional responders for us, right? It added Alfred here. It also assigned him a role, right? So Alfred got assigned that incident lead role. Talib here is now our customer support liaison because, you know, again, if it's a P1, we want to make sure that our customer support team is kept in the loop. So they've been added to this incident as well. And that is reflected here in this specific Slack channel, right? You'll see here, here's that customer support liaison, and Alfred here is your incident lead. And if we keep scrolling down here, we'll see you know, some information here as to, you know, who was assigned each task. You'll also see those that Zoom bridge and the Jira ticket that were created were also posted as a topic at the top of this Slack channel, so it doesn't get lost, right? It's always there in case, you know, somebody needs to find it. Scrolling down further, we can see some additional actions that incident workflow took for us. Not only was Alfred added as the incident lead or the incident commander, he was also given some tasks here as well, right? So again, let's say Alfred is in, you know, his second week of being a manager here, right? He's not entirely sure of what he's supposed to do as an incident lead. And that solves this problem by giving him some things to do. Like, here's some stuff you have to think of as the incident lead, right? You have to check those change events, make sure that deploys are blocked, right? And Alfred can go in here and kind of say, you know what, this is in progress. I'm going to fix this one. And, you know, this one maybe isn't super important. I'm going to skip that, or maybe I already did it, whatever. So Alfred can come in here, edit these tasks, add tasks, and make sure that he's completing the things that he's supposed to do as that incident lead. Further scrolling down, we also added some folks as a stakeholder, and we pushed out a quick little blurb here just to let them know something's going on. Now, what is a stakeholder? If we go back into the web app, this makes a little bit more sense. A stakeholder, you'll see we added a team and a user here. A stakeholder is essentially read only, right? It's your those VPs, those C-levels, those kind of higher up business folks that you don't necessarily want them to be added as responders, right? As Alfred and Talib will. You want them to be kept abreast of the situation, but you don't necessarily want them to be able to kind of come in here and start pressing buttons and run their own actions and workflows and things like that, right? So they can view all this information, they can see the notes, they can see who's assigned and who's working on things, but they don't have those action buttons to do anything. And they also get these kind of specific status updates that are sent to them, and they can be sent to them in various different channels, right? Push notifications, text messages, emails. So they can get a separate sort of an update based on sort of what's going on. And these updates are templatized, right? So you'll see here, it's pulling in information from our incident and posting it out to our stakeholders, right? So these updates are really powerful because, again, it gives those higher up folks that need to be kept in the loop, keeps them, gives them the information that they need, but also kind of keeps them a little bit off your back, so you don't need to keep, you know, answering Slacks and text messages and phone calls from you know, your C-level folks. Hey, what's the update? What's the update? What's the update? Right? We can just have that sent out automatically via those workflows. You'll also see at the bottom here, I have a reminder to send that status update, right? So I actually have this set on a loop. So with our incident workflows, you can set things on loops. You can have different logic gates. And one of those is a loop, right? So basically I'm saying every 5 minutes, prompt me and remind me to send that status update to those stakeholders, right? You'll see in just a minute here, it should pop up. Here's our reminder, boom. So every 5 minutes, it's gonna just repeat. Hey, send that status update, send that status update. Obviously, you probably want to make that maybe 30 minutes because 5 minutes is a little much, but for demo purposes, I set it to 5 minutes. So we can go ahead and send that status update directly from here. We can also ask our PagerDuty Advance to possibly just create a status update for us. Now, what is PagerDuty Advance, you may be asking? PagerDuty Advance is our generative AI co-pilot, essentially, in our Slack channel, right? So we can ask it certain questions. You know, what happened? What are the changes? What may have led to this? Right? I can ask it to maybe catch me up, right? Maybe I got added to this later. It's been maybe an hour since this incident triggered, and a lot has happened in this incident so far. I don't want to have to bug people to say, hey, somebody fill me in on what's going on, right? I can just ask PagerDuty Advanced to catch me up automatically, right? So it'll give me a little bit of a blurb of sort of what's going on here. And I can utilize this as well to kind of copy paste, send that to my stakeholders as well, right? So PagerDuty Advanced, again, we could probably spend way too much time on just Advanced there, but some really cool features that you can do that'll help you kind of get to that resolution faster. Lastly, with that incident workflow, back to some of the actions that it took, it also broadcasted out a little bit of a blurb just to a kind of a general channel. Now, you can think of this as sort of broadcasting out to auxiliary teams, right? So, you don't necessarily need these folks to be part of the actual response, hands-on keyboard fixing things, but you kind of want to get them just in the loop and just let them know that something's going on. A really good example, again, is maybe your customer support team, right? You can blast that out to their channel and just say, hey, just a heads up, we're seeing a P1, customers may be affected, just be prepared, right? There may be some angry customers. So again, that incident workflow kind of automatically push that broadcast out to this channel. It can go to multiple channels if you so choose as well. So back into our application here, or excuse me, our channel here. So we'll go ahead and run some different ideas here. Let's plug it back in, unplug and plug it back in. And as the chatter kind of comes back and forth, again, PagerDuty Advanced will kind of take that information and kind of change its status update based on sort of what's going on. So as the chatter kind of happens, Advanced starts to learn a little bit more and understand what's going on. So we'll go ahead and we can also run those actions directly out of Slack here if we so choose. An action, again, is those automation jobs, right? So kind of delineating between a workflow and an action. A workflow is going to do all the steps that you've kind of seen here, create the Slack channel, create the Zoom bridge, the Jira ticket, etc. An action is going to run some sort of a job in your environments, right? Maybe getting those Kubernetes diagnostics, etc. In this case, maybe I want to run, maybe I just need to restart the Apache service, right? So I'm gonna actually run that automation job here. And you'll see in just a second, some things start to light up because it's actually going into our environments again and actually restarting an actual real service here. So you'll see here the automation actions can not only give us the context, right? The Kubernetes health checks and diagnostics and things like that. It can also do auto remediation for us. So you'll see in just a second, it should resolve. We'll just give it a sec. But it can also do that auto remediation. So going back to what Gurinder had mentioned, let's try to resolve this incident. And here we go. We're in the resolve state now. If we go back into the web UI, and we'll just go ahead and reload real quick. That automation action actually resolved that incident for us, right? So what it did was go out into our EC2 environment, check and see, hey, is Apache down, right? If it is, great, let's try and restart it. If that worked, great, now push back into PagerDuty and resolve that incident for us, right? So I didn't actually even have to push the resolve button. The automation action, the job actually did it for me. Again, let's keep in mind, I showed you the quote unquote human in the loop or somewhat manual way to kind of push that button. And you generally do want some humans in the loop for some of these things. But keep in mind with our event orchestration rules, you can just right off the bat, before it even pages out to a human being, let's try to restart that service automatically, right? And let's just try that first before we get a human involved. Right. So just kind of use your imagination there. The possibilities are fairly endless with what you can do with both those automation jobs and the event orchestration rules here. So there's probably 100 million more things that I could show you, but I'll stop there because that's mostly what we wanted to focus on for Ops Center modernization. So I hope that kind of showcased how the that NOC team can really spend a lot more time on the big stuff, right? The smaller things, hey, we can just route that over to the P3s, P4s, P5s. We can route that on over directly to those teams, and let those teams just handle those things, right? They now are empowered to run those automation jobs on their own. So we don't necessarily need to engage our bigger teams, our L3, L4 expensive resources, right? Let them try and handle those things. And if they can't, that's okay, right? They can run those incident workflows to now call in the cavalry, right? So allowing that sort of centralized team to not just be air traffic controllers, right? Allow them to actually focus on the big stuff, the P1s, the P2s, so that they can actually knock those out much quicker and they're not inundated with a ton of noise here, right? So I'll stop there. I know we have about 15 minutes left, so I want to leave time for questions, but yeah.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions,
Sure.
so we'll kick right into those. For incident workflows, what else can they do? Can you actually integrate an incident workflow with like an external resource somewhere, like say a ServiceNow or another ITSM they might be using?
Yeah, great question. I don't want to sidetrack us, but there are an entire host of crazy cool actions that incident workflows can do. I'll show you just a quick example, but 100% that it can connect with ServiceNow. You'll see here are the actions that you have access to. And one of them, of course, is to create a ServiceNow ticket. So in my workflow, I created a Jira ticket, but you can create a ServiceNow IDSM incident as well if you so choose. So 100% it can connect with different outside tools. You'll see here we have the ability to run a Lambda function, Azure functions. You can also pull in a graph snapshot from maybe Datadog, and then you can post that into a Slack channel just so hey, here's the graph snapshot. Obviously we can see the graph going down, so we're doing bad here or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of different options for connecting to outside systems. And keep in mind, we also have a lot of really cool, not only JavaScript and JSON code that you can run as part of an action. We also just have basic API actions as well. So even if we don't have sort of that, a ServiceNow integration or a Jira integration, you can just run a lot of web API stuff directly from the incident workflow. So, the standard API calls, get request, patch request, post, whatever it may be. So you can do a lot of really, really cool things with incident workflows. Highly recommend if folks are on the call and you're curious about what incident workflows can do. Simply go into automation, click on the incident workflows, and start playing around with them. They're really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. Like if you can just send generic requests to stuff that isn't supported out of the box yet, you could support almost anything. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Fabulous. What about AI ops? How does AI ops know what to group together? Do we have to change
Yeah.
our alerts, or is like there other stuff that has to get done there? Or is it just going to figure stuff out?
Great question. So I did kind of skip over that, but there's one kind of aspect that I wanted to showcase here. So thanks for the reminder. But you'll notice we have one incident here, right? And this is what's paging out to. Geralt here is getting it's in the triggered state, so Geralt's getting push notifications and whatever it may be. An incident is noisy enough, right? As we all know. And that's a good thing, right? It's supposed to get your attention, right? So it's supposed to say, hey, this is down. We need you to get to it, right? But it doesn't need to be unnecessarily noisy, right? So down here, you'll see we have several alerts. I think we have 8 here, right? So what does that mean, right? Why are there 8 different alerts grouped into one incident here? And you'll notice all of these incidents that were grouped in here, they only triggered one incident, right? So that incident's the thing that's going to page out to you. So instead of getting 8 separate incidents paging me 8 separate times, which as you can imagine can be mind-numbingly noisy, PagerDuty was intelligent enough to say, you know what, I think these are all actually related, right? So let's group those all together into one incident, right? So I'm not getting paged 8 times, I'm getting paged once, right? So I don't have to sit there and hit that acknowledge button 8 separate times. I can also focus on the problem itself rather than having to just deal with my phone exploding, right? So that's one great aspect of AI Ops that also really helps with those centralized teams, right? So the centralized teams, again, don't have to focus on the noise, they can focus on the problem. So how does it know how to do that? Great question. So there's several different ways that PagerDuty can do what we call grouping, right? In this case, we're using intelligent alert grouping. It's our machine learning algorithm that will look at 3 different factors. It's going to look at the summary of that JSON payload, right? These are all very similar. In fact, I think they're pretty much the same. Well, they're a little bit different. The app is a little bit different. So it's going to look at, hey, all these summaries are of the JSON payload, are they fairly close together, right? And you can see these are pretty close, right? These are pretty much the same except for some small differences here. So it's going to take that into account. It's also going to take into account the timing, right? So obviously these came in, within a minute of each other. So those are probably related. It's going to take that into account. You can kind of change that and, make it a wider time window or a lesser time window if you'd like, but it's kind of up to you. The biggest bucket that it's going to look at, the third piece that it looks at, is past human behavior. So you can train this thing, right? So it's machine learning, right? So you can train it and you can teach it what to group and what not to group. So if you come in here and you say, you know what, all of these were good except for this one. This actually is its own thing. This shouldn't be grouped into this. So you can move it to a new incident, or move it to another separate existing incident. And it'll learn from that, right? It'll say next time, you know what, Nick told me that these ones here were good, but this one here was a little bit different. And any differences here, maybe the app number, it'll take that into account and say, you know what, that's its own thing. So I'm not going to group those together in the future. So it's intelligent enough to be trained. But the idea here is that it's supposed to be kind of set it and forget it, right? You turn it on and it just works.
Awesome. I think we'll take one more. What channels can stakeholders be notified on? We talked about all the notifications for regular responders.
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So again, delineating between like responders and stakeholders, right? Responders generally going to be extremely noisy when they, I don't want to say noisy anymore. Let's say attention grabbing. It's going to be very attention grabbing when they're paged, right? And that's because you need them to respond immediately and you need them to actually get hands on keyboard and start working on things. Stakeholder notifications, however, are somewhat less noisy. And you know what, I can actually show you in my profile. This is configured in your profile. You're going to go into your notification rules. You'll see here when a high urgency incident is assigned to me, pretty noisy, right? Excuse me, attention grabbing, right? I have a lot of different notifications here to get my attention. However, if I scroll down here, I can also customize when I'm subscribed or added as a stakeholder to an incident, and that incident has a status update. How do I want to be notified, right? So I've made it a little bit more noisy than maybe some folks want, but I have different options here, right? I can add an email, I can add my a push notification and an SMS. So those are the 3 main ones: email, push notification, SMS. Depends on your stakeholders, right? Do they want it to be fairly noisy and they want to be notified a little bit more attention grabbing than normal, then fine. They can kind of dial it up as they'd like, but maybe they just want a quick little text message or a push notification and then just be quiet, right? So it's kind of up to them, but these are the 3 main channels that they can be notified.
Awesome.
And it can be cut to their needs.
Sweet. All right. Well, that was great. Lots of information here for folks. There will be a recording available, so you can go back and make sure you didn't miss anything, or if you want to review stuff, all that great thing will be available to you as well. So we'll let you go for this week. Join us again next week for another demo. If you are joining us live on Zoom today, there will be a survey afterwards. Please fill it out. Let us know how we're doing, if there are things that you'd like to change or see differently. If you're joining us on LinkedIn or you're watching a recording, you want to give us some feedback, you can post it in the community site, community.pagerduty.com, or you can email our team, community-team@pagerduty.com. We'd love to hear from you. What other topics you'd like to see, other things you'd like us to discuss, any other ideas that you have you'd like to share with us. We would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to Gurinder and Nick for this amazing bunch of information for everyone. And for everybody else out there, we'll wish you an uneventful day, and we'll see you again next week.